Every time you ask a voice assistant something, every time a chatbot understands your complaint, every time an email system automatically tags messages as urgent, artificial intelligence is reading and understanding language. That is natural language processing, and it is worth 15 to 20% of your AI-900 exam. In this video, 10 questions, all from the NLP domain. The tricky part is not knowing what sentiment analysis is. It is knowing the difference between sentiment analysis, text classification, named entity recognition, and key phrase extraction when the exam wraps them in a real-world scenario. Stay until question 10, because that one requires you to correctly match 4 different NLP capabilities to 4 different business requirements simultaneously. Let's go. Welcome back to Skills on Cloud. If you are new here, this is part 4 of a 10-part AI-900 practice series. Links to parts 1, 2, and 3 are in the description. Subscribe and hit the bell so every new part drops straight into your feed. Let's get into the questions. Quick orientation. Natural language processing workloads on Azure carry 15 to 20% of the AI-900 exam. The domain covers the Azure Language Service, the Azure Translator, and the Azure Speech Service. Within the Azure Language Service alone, there are several distinct capabilities that the exam tests, including sentiment analysis, key phrase extraction, named entity recognition, language detection, text classification, question answering, and conversational language understanding. The key exam skill is matching the right capability to the right scenario. Today's 10 questions are built around that exact skill. Let's start. Question 1 of 10. A hotel chain collects thousands of online reviews every week and wants to automatically determine whether each review expresses a positive, negative, or neutral opinion, without reading each one manually. Which Azure Language Service capability should they use? Option A, key phrase extraction. Option B, named entity recognition. Option C, sentiment analysis. Option D, language detection. Take a moment to think. The correct answer is C, sentiment analysis. Sentiment analysis evaluates text and returns a sentiment label, positive, negative, or neutral, along with a confidence score. It is the go-to capability for understanding the overall opinion expressed in text such as customer reviews, social media posts, and survey responses. Key phrase extraction identifies the most important words and phrases in a text, but does not classify the sentiment. Named entity recognition identifies entities such as people, places, and organizations. Language detection determines which language a piece of text is written in. Key trigger, classifying opinion as positive, negative, or neutral equals sentiment analysis. Question 2 of 10. A news aggregator wants to automatically surface the main subjects and themes from thousands of articles each day, such as interest rates, Federal Reserve, and inflation from a finance article, so editors can quickly see what each article is about. Which Azure Language Service capability is most appropriate? Option A, sentiment analysis. Option B, key phrase extraction. Option C, text summarization. Option D, named entity recognition. Think about which capability identifies the core topics. The correct answer is B, key phrase extraction. Key phrase extraction identifies the most meaningful and representative words and phrases from a body of text, giving a quick summary of the main topics without reading the full content. Sentiment analysis classifies the overall opinion. Text summarization produces a shortened version of the text, which is a related but distinct capability. Named entity recognition identifies specific entities such as people, dates, and organizations, which partially overlaps, but is not the primary tool for surfacing themes. Key trigger, extracting the main topics and subjects from text equals key phrase extraction. Question 3 of 10. A legal firm wants to automatically scan contracts and extract the names of people, companies, dates, and monetary amounts mentioned in each document so they can be stored in a structured database. Which Azure Language Service capability should they use? Option A, sentiment analysis. Option B, language detection. Option C, key phrase extraction. Option D, named entity recognition. Consider what type of information needs to be identified. The correct answer is D, named entity recognition. also known as NER, named entity recognition, scans text and identifies specific real-world entities such as person names, organization names, dates, locations, and monetary values, then classifies them into predefined categories. Extracting people, companies, dates, and amounts from contracts is a classic named entity recognition task. Sentiment analysis determines overall opinion. Language detection identifies the language of the text. Key phrase extraction surfaces the most relevant words, but does not categorize them into entity types. Key trigger, identifying and categorizing specific real-world things in text equals named entity recognition. Question 4 of 10. A global e-commerce platform wants to automatically translate product descriptions from English into 35 other languages in real time as customers browse the site. Which Azure service is designed for this use case? Option A, Azure Language Service. Option B, Azure Speech Service. Option C, Azure Translator. Option D, Azure Bot Service. Think about which service is built specifically for language translation. The correct answer is C, Azure Translator. Azure Translator is a cloud-based neural machine translation service that supports real-time text translation across more than 100 languages. It is purpose-built for text translation at scale and integrates easily into applications. Azure Language Service provides natural language understanding capabilities such as sentiment analysis, entity recognition, and key phrase extraction, but is not a translation service. Azure Speech Service handles speech-to-text and text-to-speech conversion, not written text translation. Azure Bot Service is for building conversational agents. Key trigger, translating written text from one language to another equals Azure Translator. Question 5 of 10. A call center wants to automatically convert recorded customer phone calls into written transcripts so that agents can search and review them. Which Azure service should they use? Option A, Azure Translator. Option B, Azure Language Service. Option C, Azure Form Recognizer. Option D, Azure Speech Service. Think about what is being converted and in which direction. The correct answer is D, Azure Speech Service. Azure Speech Service provides speech-to-text capability, which transcribes spoken audio into written text. Converting recorded phone calls into searchable transcripts is a direct application of the speech-to-text feature within Azure Speech Service. Azure Translator converts written text from one language to another, not audio to text. Azure Language Service analyzes text that already exists in written form. Azure Form Recognizer extracts data from structured documents and forms, not audio recordings. Key trigger, converting spoken audio into written text equals Azure Speech Service speech-to-text. Stop there for a second. Score out of 5 in the comments right now. 0 to 5. All scores welcome. I read every single one. And listen, if the first 5 felt manageable, do not get comfortable. The second half gets progressively harder, and question 10 puts 4 different NLP capabilities in front of you at once. That is exactly the kind of question that separates exam ready from exam day surprise. Let's keep going. Question 6 of 10. A smart home application must understand commands like turn off the kitchen lights at 10 p.m. and correctly identify that the user intends to control a device, that the device is the kitchen lights, and that the time is 10 p.m. Which Azure Language Service feature is designed to extract this structured meaning from natural language? Option A, sentiment analysis. Option B, question answering. Option C, conversational language understanding. Option D, text classification. Consider what type of analysis is needed. The correct answer is C, conversational language understanding, also known as CLU. Conversational language understanding is designed to identify the intent behind a user utterance and extract the named entities, called slots or entities, from that utterance. In the example, the intent is to control a device, the entity for device is kitchen lights, and the entity for time is 10 p.m. Sentiment analysis classifies the emotional tone. Question answering retrieves answers from a knowledge base in response to questions. Text classification assigns a category label to a document. Key trigger, identifying user intent and extracting entities from a spoken or typed command equals conversational language understanding. Question 7 of 10. A software company wants to build a help portal where customers can type questions like, "How do I reset my password?" and receive accurate answers drawn automatically from the company's existing FAQ documents and support articles. Which Azure Language Service feature is most appropriate? Option A, Conversational Language Understanding. Option B, Named Entity Recognition. Option C, Question Answering. Option D, Text Summarization. Think about what the system is doing with the knowledge base. The correct answer is C, Question Answering. The question answering feature in Azure Language Service allows you to build a knowledge base from existing documents, FAQ pages, and structured content, and then serve accurate answers to user questions by matching them against that knowledge base. Conversational language understanding identifies intents and entities from commands, but does not retrieve answers from a document store. Named entity recognition extracts entities from text. Text summarization condenses long content. Key trigger: querying a knowledge base to return answers from existing documents equals question answering. Question 8 of 10. A customer support platform receives messages from users around the world in many different languages. Before routing each message to the appropriate regional agent, the system needs to automatically identify which language each message is written in. Which Azure Language Service capability should be used? Option A, key phrase extraction. Option B, sentiment analysis. Option C, language detection. Option D, named entity recognition. This one is more straightforward, so make sure your answer is precise. The correct answer is C, language detection. Language detection analyzes a text input and returns the identified language along with a confidence score. It supports detection of over 100 languages and is the correct first step before routing or translation. Key phrase extraction, sentiment analysis, and named entity recognition are all downstream text analysis tasks that assume the language is already known. Key trigger: identifying which language a text is written in equals language detection. Question 9 of 10. A developer needs to build a voice-activated assistant that listens to a user speaking, converts the speech to text, and then analyzes the resulting text to determine the user's intent and extract relevant details. How many distinct Azure services are involved in this complete pipeline? Option A, 1, because Azure Speech Service handles everything. Option B, 1, because Azure Language Service handles everything. Option C, 2, Azure Speech Service for speech to text, and Azure Language Service, with conversational language understanding for intent and entity extraction. Option D, 3, Azure Speech Service, Azure Translator, and Azure Language Service. Think carefully about each step in the pipeline. The correct answer is C, 2 services. The pipeline has 2 distinct stages. Stage 1, converting spoken audio into text. That is the job of Azure Speech Service using its speech-to-text capability. Stage 2, analyzing the resulting text to identify the user's intent and extract entities. That is the job of Azure Language Service using conversational language understanding. Azure Translator is not needed because no language translation is required. Neither service alone can perform both steps. Key trigger: voice pipeline equals speech service for audio to text, then language service for understanding. Question 10 of 10, the trickiest question in the set, so concentrate on every detail. A multinational bank has 4 requirements. Requirement 1, automatically scan incoming customer emails written in various languages and determine which language each one is written in. Requirement 2, identify whether each email expresses a complaint, a query, or a compliment. Requirement 3, extract the specific account numbers, dates, and transaction amounts mentioned in each email. Requirement 4, translate emails written in languages other than English into English before processing. Which combination of Azure Language Service capabilities and services correctly addresses all 4 requirements? Option A, sentiment analysis for requirements 1 and 2, named entity recognition for requirement 3, and Azure Translator for requirement 4. Option B, language detection for requirement 1, text classification for requirement 2, named entity recognition for requirement 3, and Azure Translator for requirement 4. Option C, language detection for requirement 1, sentiment analysis for requirement 2, named Entity Recognition for Requirement 3, and Azure Translator for Requirement 4. Option D, Language Detection for Requirement 1, Key Phrase Extraction for Requirement 2, named Entity Recognition for Requirement 3, and Azure Speech Service for Requirement 4. Now here is where the trap lies. Requirements 2 and 4 are the most likely to catch you out. Read them carefully before selecting. Requirement 2 asks to classify emails into complaint, query, or compliment. These are custom categories, not the standard positive, negative, neutral scale used by sentiment analysis. That makes Requirement 2 a text classification task, where you train a model to assign custom labels. Requirement 4 asks for translation of written text between languages. That is Azure Translator, not Azure Speech Service, which handles audio. Let's check each option. Option A incorrectly uses sentiment analysis for Requirement 1, which is language detection. Option C uses sentiment analysis for Requirement 2, but the categories are custom labels, not sentiment scores. Option D uses Azure Speech Service for Requirement 4, which handles audio, not written text translation. The correct answer is B. Language detection for Requirement 1, text classification for Requirement 2, named Entity Recognition for Requirement 3, and Azure Translator for Requirement 4. Remember, sentiment analysis returns positive, negative, or neutral. Custom category labels like complaint or compliment require text classification. How did you go? Question 10 is one of the hardest in the entire series, not because any single capability is difficult, but because the exam stacks 4 requirements together and hides the traps in subtle wording differences. If you got it right, that is a genuinely strong result. Post your final score out of 10 below. Now, coming in Part 5, we are moving into conversational artificial intelligence on Azure. That covers Azure Bot Service, how bots are built, how they connect to language models, and how to choose between bot-based and non-bot solutions in exam scenarios. Conversational AI questions look deceptively simple, but the service selection traps are real. Part 5 will give you the framework to handle them. Subscribe now. The countdown is on your screen. See you in Part 5.